Welcome. It's TechFest time. It's February. We're all awake and excited and raring to go. And it's probably one of the few talks that you can attend in your underpants whilst you're still in bed, which is a bonus for many people. We've got a few things to celebrate this particular month. But first, I know there's a few of you who have not attended TechFest before. So a little bit about us, I guess, the hosts. So Alec, do you want to just give us a bit of background?
Should be good at this now. I've done it so many times, but yeah, no. So I'm the talent acquisition manager at BGSS, a tech company in Nottingham, and outside of work, I've got lots of side hustles, is the cool thing to say these days, in food and wine. So I'm passionate about that, and I'm really looking forward to getting a haircut soon. I must admit that's my number one lockdown thing. Someone asked me the other day if there's people who have joined several TechFests if I still had my moustache. And I'd forgotten that I had a moustache at the start of lockdown. So, if you're lucky, you might be able to see a YouTube video where I had that in one of the talks. So, yeah.
Have you still got it? Have you got like in a cupboard somewhere just for?
Oh, I have a story. Yeah. No. It's I shaved it and sent it, for charity. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Paul Bailey. I'm a designer. I work for a company called Spark, and myself and Alec, we've been running TechFest now for 2 years, which is 2 years today. Look at that GIF. Yeah, are you happy with that GIF?
I'm not happy is a strong word. I've almost got the mustache there though, so
yeah, is it good? Oh, you've paused now. You've stopped. So yeah, which has been phenomenal really, because I think over the last year in particular, we've kind of shifted and changed, and everything's gone online. And but and originally we started this, and it was actually an office-based thing, and we'd invite people into the office in Nottingham and provide them with breakfast. But actually, over the last year or so, I think switching to a more virtual event has meant that a lot more people can attend, and we've been able to bring speakers from a much wider area. Which has also kind of meant we've got 1,000 people now in our meetup group. What about that, GIF? Is that more in the right direction? Happy with that?
It's going in a direction, yeah. Yeah. If I don't have time to do the slides myself, then this is what will happen, won't it? I go, yeah, you do that, Paul.
if you don't check them the night before, then this is what happens. Look what I can get away with. So I guess I just wanted to say a really big thank you to all the speakers. We've had some fabulous speakers over the last 2 years that have given up the time and dedicated, preparing these brilliant talks and sharing all their knowledge and their insight. And I think, who did we have first? Was it Paul Maloney, wasn't it? Yeah. Talked about DevOps back in February 2019.
Ort Val. I always still remember that. Ort Val is new term for DevOps. It's not taken off yet, but I keep mentioning it. So shout out to Paul. I'm still trying.
And we've covered a really wide range of topics since then. I mean, everything from augmented audio reality to accessibility to Internet of Things. We had stuff about the cloud, stuff about agile and voice interfaces and testing. I think for me, what I always find is I always come away from these sessions, I always feel like I've learned something new about an area of design and technology. Which is I guess what makes it for me really worthwhile doing every month, because you're kind of coming here and you're meeting people and learning something that you didn't know about. But if you've missed any of these sessions, we have got a YouTube channel and it's got 37 subscribers. Woohoo! I think Rob Van Tol is still leading the way with a home working psychological perspective that he did back in, I want to say April last year. Is that right, Alex? Do you think April?
Yeah, it was not, maybe May. It was not long after, we'd all started working from home. So I think it resonated for sure.
Yeah, still really relevant now, I think. But what we've been trying to do is trying to record all the talks that we've done since, I think, probably April last year. And we're sticking them on the YouTube channel. So if there's any talks that you've missed, if you want to see Rob's talk about home working, or Jess White's talk, which is all about speaking in the virtual world, or even a vet's talk, and find out how you get from being a vet to working in tech. Yeah, they're all there. So yeah, take a look. And to help celebrate his second birthday, this is new to Alec. He doesn't know this is coming either. We've got some merch. We've got TechFest cups that you can't see. You kind of see.
Oh, wow. I've not got one of these.
You've not got one yet. No, they only came yesterday.
You didn't include me on your birthday post either. Yeah, 2 years. Thanks to all the speakers. I didn't get tagged in that. I noticed. Outrageous.
Sorry,
Well,
mate.
I'll
update it. All right, we'll have words, I think, and I'll make sure you get a mug. There's one with your name on it. Anyway, this has kindly been donated by our BGSS friends. It's quality china. You can put hot beverage of your choice in. But all you got to do to win one is tweet birthday wishes, and we'll announce 3 winners at the end. So, Alec, that's a job right there with your name on it.
What if only 2 people enter, Paul? I'm just saying.
Well, you'll get one.
Right? Okay. I'll tweet as well. That's fine.
I'm sure Carl's tweeting right now. I can see him. You see his hands
Yeah.
Yeah. So just tweet a birthday message to hashtag #NotTechFest, and we will pick 3 lucky winners at the end, and we'll make sure you get one of these fabulous mugs. You can also check us out on the Tech Nottingham Slack channel at TechFast Monthly. I know a few of you are already there saying good morning. Other stuff that's going on. So I promised the guys at Create Leicester that I'd do a little plug, although their event is this evening, so it might make it a long day, but it's definitely worth checking out. They've been doing Create Leicester now for quite a long time, and they've got a really interesting guy today called Christopher Murphy, who is a designer, writer, speaker, and he mentors businesses and helping them to kind of launch new products. So it's definitely something that's, if you're interested in that kind of space, how you get from ideas to actual delivering things in a kind of venture capital, kind of startup kind of space. It'll be really interesting to kind of listen to Christopher's talk, which talks a lot about design thinking, lean startup, and this whole element of no code, which sounds kind of interesting. If you want to speak at TechFest, go on, we're really nice. We love to kind of hear about people in the local area that are passionate about design and technology. We haven't got any slots till later in the year, so you've got plenty of time to prepare. But if you really fancy having a go, get in touch either with us via the TechFest Tech Nottingham Slack channel or via Twitter, and we can have a chat. Next month, we've got the amazing Jenny Lathrop, who is going to be talking about agile working and how you might apply that to your day-to-day life. So Jenny is a director of Feel Good, Do Good, which is a business which helps organizations, makes organizations happier and do work better. She's also an agile coach, trainer, and blogger. I'm really interested in this because I've got a lot of connection, a lot of thinking around how design thinking works, not only in the workplace context but also at home. So I'm really curious about how Jenny applies a kind of agile mindset to not what she's doing at work, but also what people do in their home life away from work as well. So that's enough ramble and preamble from me and from Alec. I'm going to hand you over now to the amazing Karl Jeffries. I've been lucky enough to kind of know Karl for just about a year now, and he's really helped kind of change my perspective a little bit about what creativity is. And we've had some quite deep and meaningful conversations exploring this subject. So I'm really looking forward to his talk. So Karl, shall I hand over to you?
Yeah. Thank you very much. So let's go share screen.
It's very disconcerting that people were just typing mugs in capital letters. I thought they were talking about us, Paul, but they're excited about the mugs. So just to clarify that. Well, at least I think so.
So hopefully you should be able to see my share screen now, guys.
We can.
Yep.
Karl, do you want us to turn our video off for now?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, give that a go. That might help for the recording, possibly. And before I start as well, I was just going to say that if you're viewing this, it's changed now, but you might want to view it in side-by-side mode because I'm quite an active sort of speaker. So If you go up to the view or top right menu, you should see view there, and you'll see a couple of options for you. One of them is going to be view active speaker, I think, something like that. And then if you want, you can change the size of the share screen relative to my webcam so that, you know, you sort of make them sort of equal, if you will, or something like that. So I'm not just a tiny little thing in the corner. Great. So I'm going to begin. Thank you. Thank you, Paul, for the introduction. We're all good. So let's go. For the, well, it's now 20 years. For the past 20 years, I have been fascinated by research on creativity and how it relates to designers and other professionals. And it's one of those areas of study that virtually everyone, it seems, has an opinion on. Creativity. It's such an evocative word, isn't it? And when folk find out what I do as a creativity coach, there are two types of reactions. People who tell me they are creative and people who tell me they are not creative. So let me ask you guys at Not Tech Fast, are you creative? Such a loaded question, isn't it? I can't see or hear the ripple of impact that's having. We'll come back to that later at the end, but you will have an instinctive response to this question, a yes or a no. And if you are having a mild panic attack, please accept my apologies and note that's a really interesting response to that question too. Creativity, I find, is a fascinating thing and has a fascinating role in tech. For example, I've heard it said that creativity has no place in UX design, that creativity is an ego thing, something to be avoided, and it's even against the nature of UX. And I get that. It's not about the designer, it's about the user. In contrast, I've also heard other UX professionals say creativity is crucial to the whole process. And it's fascinating, isn't it? One word, creativity, such very different associations and emotional responses. For me, the bottom line is that creativity fuels design and design fuels innovation. And if you value innovation and design, then you're investing in creativity, either your own or the people you work for. And I find that a deeper understanding of creativity, what it is, how you can shape it for your own purposes, improves the return on that investment. Creativity, I think, also builds resilience. And that's the key theme for my talk today. Indeed, is probably the key theme for 2021, if not the next 5 years. And the main takeaway I want to kind of get across today is this: take your creativity seriously. Put the structures in place for creativity resilience, first for yourself, and then as tech professionals for those you support. For me, there was a time when I kind of took my creativity for granted. I didn't even know that creativity was something that was studied, let alone the focus of serious research. I just did it. Other people seem to do it, sometimes well, other times poorly. So let me share a little bit of my story. The formal study for me of creativity, I can pin down to September 2000 AD, when I started teaching designers. And at that time, higher education, it changed from a kind of an elite kind of model to a mass education model. And the impact of that was a much wider range of abilities than I'd experienced when I was at university. And in a tutorial, if I said something like, well, these ideas are okay, but we need to push it more, we need more creativity. If I said that, only 20% got what I meant. 20%. And that was a shock for me. I seriously had to ask myself, can I help the other 80%? So there was a new way of buying books at the time. It's called Amazon. You might have heard of it. And I found a book by a chap called Edward de Bono called Serious Creativity. What a great title, I thought. So I devoured that book. I made it my own, developed workshops and ran them. And all that effort and initial turmoil paid off. And I was hooked. It seemed to work. You could teach creativity. It turned out de Bono was my gateway drug. I then found E. Paul Torrance, Robert Sternberg, Teresa Amabile, Kaufman, Plucker, Runco, Bear, Csikszentmihalyi. The list went on. And these were brilliant minds that had dedicated careers to the study of creativity in one form or another. And what was really mad is I'd been educated at an elite design school. I'd worked as a professional designer, and no one had ever told me about the study of creativity, how I could use it to help me as a creative professional, and how I could use it to help my peers and help those that I managed and supported. So if this is news to you today, that creativity is something that's studied, then I'm delighted. So welcome to the science of creativity and the riches it offers. In this presentation, I'll begin to explore a few insights to ignite your interest in creativity research. And I'd also like to offer a way to reframe creativity for tech and UX professionals, to offer a view of creativity that I think is better built for resilience. But before we do that, the question we can't escape at this point is, what is creativity? And I'm going to briefly describe what is known as the standard definition of creativity. And it is this: creativity requires originality and effectiveness. Now, those exact terms can change, but these two criteria stay the same. Morris Stein, 1953, talked about novelty and usefulness. The very wonderful, but sadly missed, Sir Ken Robinson worded it as having original ideas that have value. And other scholars say it's a perceptible product that is novel and useful in a social context. Different wording, but the same principle at work. The standard definition of creativity has this twin feature of novelty and usefulness. Now, what's really important about defining creativity is not that researchers have a standard definition. I mean, that's fascinating in itself. What I find really important about this definition is it reveals values. You may or you may not agree with a definition, but what that does is show hidden values and reveals myths you probably don't know you have. And values and myths can often underpin our professional cultures and shape them, often unconsciously. The value then of defining creativity isn't actually academic. It's something valuable for every designer, UXer, DevOps and tech professional to do. And what I find is most have never really had that opportunity, and certainly not to the depth that fuels peak performance for themselves and others. And that lack of depth can often be the root cause of problems for many designers and organizations. Over years of coaching designers and other professionals, at some point, we always hit massive myths about creativity. Classics like, I'm not creative, I can't draw, as if creativity equals being artistic. Or if you can draw, that means you're creative. Another myth is only special people are creative. You've either got it or you haven't. This kind of talent idea starting to kick in. And probably the biggest of them all is you can't teach creativity, this fixed mindset about it. Now, these are myths. that surround creativity. They're not true, but when you hear them often enough, people start to act as if they are. And even designers and UX professionals and tech professionals can get caught up with this. And more often than not, we don't even know when this is happening to us. And one of the things I like about creativity research is it's often trying to debunk these myths. And there's quite a lot of it now. And a lot of researchers have spent much of their time and careers doing that. And what I find most interesting is that these types of myths really take root when industries say they need to be creative. And you are in double trouble when you have creativity in your job title. Other professionals and industries like to disguise creativity, especially through their job title. So I don't know if that sounds familiar or if you know anyone like that. Either way, here's what their working lives can look like. You get back to that goddamn cubicle and start thinking outside the box. I love that cartoon. It always brings a smile to my face. And at the same time, it hurts because it's still true for many medium and large organizations. What I find is what it actually looks like is this. I was talking to a person who'd worked for major corporations, huge global brands, and won a lot of prestigious awards. And at one point they said, as we were discussing, they said, about themselves, they said, I'm like an idea machine, a 24/7 idea machine. And I thought that's a great image. So I asked, how do you get supported? How is the idea machine maintained for peak performance? And the reply was immediate. It isn't. You get used up, spat out. Now, as creativity becomes more and more crucial for digital products and services, getting used up and spat out is a default future I don't want for any of us. We need to avoid burnout by developing cultures and structures that nurture creativity resilience, first in ourselves, then in those we support. And the quickest and the most powerful way I've found to get this across is to reframe what it takes to be a creative professional. Think of the creative professional as an idea athlete, or as I love to say, a creativity Olympian. Finding novel and useful solutions to complex challenges is tough. Doing that day in and day out even harder. It's a massive human achievement, a peak performance that requires honed creativity. And the analogy with athletes in this context is a powerful one, especially when you reflect on what it actually takes to compete at that level or to get to the Olympics. The image is this: an elite athlete doesn't just turn up at the Olympics and do their thing, they're coached. Professionals advise on nutrition. If they get injured, a physio is there to get them back to health. So to enable an athlete to achieve a personal best, several professionals surround them and they're called upon as and when required. There's an ecosystem at work here, and its purpose is to guard against burnout, build resilience, and support peak performance. Now, is it odd that an athlete has a coach, a physio, a nutritionist to advise on areas for the development? Is it odd that they use such professionals to improve their performance and gain incremental improvements over time? No, Karl, I hear you say, it's not odd. It would be absurd, wouldn't it, to ask those questions of an Olympic athlete. What is absurd then is that tech professionals like yourselves can lack the same advantage for their creative potential. And it's especially absurd when you think about how important realizing that potential is for what they do, how that feeds into the key performance indicators for the organization they may work for. So my big thing here really is it's time we challenge these myths around creativity and support and no longer let them undermine the development of creativity in the many forms it takes. And the analogy with an elite athlete is a powerful one for any creative professional. And it is particularly important for those related to tech. For example, I recently found out if you work in tech in the UK, you are 5 times more depressed than the UK average. 5 times. That's grim. Those figures come from a 2019 survey. So these are pre-COVID, and they showed that the cause of stress for 66% of respondents was their work. And the report stated that this is not people reporting periods of stress. 13% are constantly stressed and with symptoms affecting their daily lives. Those levels of stress are the same as high intensity professionals like medical workers and health services. That type of stress kills creativity. This is powerful data, and it's a call to action. The positive here is working structures and organizations that support creativity. By doing that, are building resilience. Creativity in this way becomes a metric for resilience and through this well-being. I was greatly honored to be a speaker at the Design Ops Summit last year. And one of the other speakers, Michelle Morrison from Dropbox, captured it wonderfully with a phrase that she called healthy creative culture. Thought that summed it up, healthy creative culture. Kat Velos also gave a brilliant speech about loneliness in the workshop. And she really reminded me that we create our culture. We design the system. That, I feel, is a great attitude for us to take forward, because I know that we can do better. And I know this because the great news is you have already been a Creativity Olympian. You might feel out of shape, you might feel off your peak, but you've done it before. And I've got some research that's really lovely to kind of get that across. George Land and his colleagues in 1968 did a study on how children would be, how children would score on a creativity test. And this was the same test that Land and his team had been asked to develop by NASA. And this was to evaluate the creativity of their engineers and scientists. And to the test, yeah, it had a number of different ways to record achievement or the scoring of it. And one of them was labeled genius, creative genius. And they tested this on 1,600 children. And what percentage of 5-year-olds scored as genius in Land's study? Not going to put it in chat just for the moment, but what do you think? 1,600 kids, a test built for NASA scientists, run it with them. How many of those kids scored genius level? 98%. They then retested the same children when they were 10. What percentage of these now 10-year-olds do you think scored at genius level on that test? 30%. 98, 5 years later, 30. Same children, 5 years later. So what percentage of 15-year-olds scored at that genius level? What do you think? 12%. you'll see a trend. The same test that's used on thousands of adults, and the average age was around 30 years of age. So what percentage of 30-somethings scored at that level, do you think? 30-somethings creativity test. 2%. It's fascinating, isn't it? And there are a number of factors at work here, but one of the conclusions of that study was that being uncreative is learnt. As we move forward within tech, what future do you want to build for creativity? What resilience research shows us is that optimism is good for us. And I'm not talking here about false hope. I'm not talking about deluding ourselves or a lack of criticality. We're all very well aware of the challenges. We're aware, and we choose to embrace optimism, to be hopeful for the future. You have the opportunity now to do things differently in how creativity is supported within the tech industry. You don't have to, you can set a new default future, not follow the path set by the past. You don't have to perpetuate myths that surround designers. You don't have to follow other corporate approaches to creative professionals. Their lived experience hasn't been good for many of them, and still for too many, it's very far removed from that healthy creative culture. Instead, see yourself for what you are, what you need, and what you give. However you've been labeled, or you've labeled yourself, whether you're UX, UI, information architect, design ops, principal designer, chief innovation officer, whatever the job title, what you really are, you are creativity Olympians. You are idea athletes, and you can develop practices and working cultures and structures that nurture peak creativity for yourself and those you support. Imagine what this industry would look like if we consistently brought peak creativity to what we do. Imagine if the people and the cultures around us were more than just rooting for us to reach our peak, but actively supporting us to do so. Imagine what we could achieve with that as a default future. It's not a dream. It's an option. We have everything we need to begin that journey. So let's have the courage to reach for that future. Let's dare for creativity and resilience, and dare greatly. Thank you. That's me.
I'm still here. Are you still there, Paul?
Yes, back in the
Hello.
room. Back in the room. So we already got some feedback. Yvette says, "Wow, that's amazing." We're going to go into a bit of a Q&A.
Yeah,
so
I'm expecting lots of interesting debate and questions on this one.
If you want to submit questions, then feel free to do that now. I've got a good one to kick off, Carl. If you want to.
I was gonna. Oh, yeah, let's do that. I was gonna thought we might do our polls as well, just to get a sense of our audience in terms of who they are, what sort of their kind of who we've got in the room as a collective, if you will. How about that? And then we can tailor the questions relative to some of that.
Perfect. Do you want me to launch the first poll then?
Let's put on the. So I would two things to say. First is this is completely anonymous. Yeah, so no one will ever know the answers to this. Paul set them up, but he assures me they are anonymous, and he won't go and sell them on where. Yeah, exactly. He's ticked the box. Second thing is, I'm asking about creativity here, but in the broadest sense of the word. So rather than, if you think it's something artistic, think of it as broader than that. So it's finding novel, new sort of useful things. So our first question is being creative important to your career? It's a yes or a no. Let's see what we get in. And when you feel you've got enough numbers, Paul.
Do gifts count, Paul? Is that creativity? I don't know. I'm sure that was a question I had for Carl. I'm not convinced.
I've seen there's been some great gifts on Twitter wishing us a happy birthday. I don't know if you've seen some of those.
I have. That's been my job. Don't worry, I'm on it.
Okay, let's share the results.
Okay, that's great. That's really interesting, isn't it? So yes, we've got 96%. So we're talking, you know, we should be talking to the converted here to some extent, maybe. Great. The next question I've got is that rather tricky one. But how creative are you? If it's important to your career, 96% of you, how creative are you? So that's really, we're just on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is at your least. So it's your creativity. It's not, you know, Einstein or whatever it is. Do you feel you're at your peak, or do you feel you're at your least? So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you vote? You'll see it coming in, Paul, as it's developing. Yeah. So it's a moment of truth for us.
You ready?
Yeah.
Share the results.
Excellent. That's really interesting, isn't it? So we're coming in about the most 6 or 7, around about there. Some 8s, some 9s, some 1s and 2s and stuff like that. So we got a range. We've got a range here, but yeah, that's the sort of angle or distribution, if you will. And then my last question is, given that, are you getting enough support to reach or maintain your creative peak? So if you're at a 10, great. How are you maintaining it? If you're anything less than that, how are you moving forward or developing it? So are you getting enough support to reach or maintain your creative peak? And let's just go yes or no and see what we get there. And I always think with this one, you know, if you say yes and you're at your 10, and I'd love to talk to you. You know,
Yeah,
I'd love to know where you work.
Over to me as well. That'd be great.
Absolutely. I mean, genuinely, that's not a joke. I'm actually one who, you know, even 9 or 8. I'll, you know, if that is where you're at there. So let's see what we get. How many of these people are being supported to reach their peak?
That's a lot higher than I thought.
What, in terms of yes, there's 35%, 65% no. Yeah.
I thought there'd be more no's.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? But there are some, that's the thing, they are out there. There are people out there in organizations that are getting supported to reach their peak. They exist. So some people are doing it, and equally the majority are not. So there's still room for improvement. That's really helpful, I think, for me to get a sense of who we've got here. So yeah, if there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Okay, shall we start at the top then? So Tim, we've got Tim. Let me see if
Tim Elliott.
Do you know Tim Elliott, do you?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think at one point we sort of gate crashed his gig in the definition of creativity. So I only feel we should return.
I seem to remember you asking him some difficult questions. So be prepared, I think.
Morning, Tim.
Morning.
How you doing? Yay! Thank you very much. So you've got a great question. Do you want to ask Carl your question about relationships?
Yeah. Okay. So it seems to me that a lot of people perceive creativity to be some kind of spark or piece of magic out of nothing, right? But I think I wondered what the relationship, or what you think the relationship between creativity and knowledge is. So whether creativity comes from a base of knowledge or understanding in a topic you're generating ideas about, or it is magic.
Oh, that's a gorgeous question. That is a gorgeous question. Thank you, Tim. It's a hot debate within creativity research, and there isn't it's complicated in some respects depending on the domain that you're in. So, for example, I'll just throw out a study there that they did on maths. For example, when they looked at creativity in maths, and the study had sort of three sort of groups. Well, no, there's three findings that came from it really. If you were being creative in maths, that is coming up with novel ideas within it, they found that people who didn't score well, who didn't have very much maths knowledge. Right, and this isn't surprising particularly, but it really it didn't help. You needed almost like a baseline of mathematical understanding to be creative. So there was a relationship there. However, within that subsection of people who were creative or had the knowledge, sorry, they found that there was some people who had the knowledge but who were not that creative, and there was some people who had knowledge. And there were, so you had to have it, but even if you had it, it wasn't enough. And it seemed to be that maybe some of the things were that if you coded your understanding of the domain in a very rigid way about, oh, this is the way you do this formula, or this is the way you calculate that, that didn't help. And the ones who were more creative had the knowledge, but they were more flexible with it. Maybe they're more abstracted and stuff like that. So there was an example there of where it's not enough. Sometimes you need the knowledge in the domain to be able to push the domain forward. But having taken the knowledge on board, it can constrain you, and you need to have techniques and strategies to break out of that. I think in other domains, the entry level for having a go and expressing yourself and getting into it isn't as tough. So now this gets awkward about the art science sort of area, but generally some more artistic areas you can get into it, you can have a go at it, and therefore there's more opportunity to express yourself. But again, we're dealing with this challenge where, honest to God, all the time people seem to fixate about creativity as drawing or artistic, and I was trying to spend most of my time saying, well, no, it's not that. It's broader than that. So yeah, that's does that answer, Tim? Is that an interesting reply to your brilliant question?
Yeah, it is. It is. Because I work in B2B with creativity, and I'm of the belief that creative people, if you stick that label on people, automatically part of that creativity seek out knowledge and understanding. So always act, if you're trying to teach organizational or individual creativity, you always need to start with building knowledge or understanding so they have confidence to be creative, the freedom to be creative from it. But yeah, good answer. Thanks.
Yeah. And again, Teresa Amable's model, componential model of creativity, says you need three things. You need a domain knowledge, which is what I think you're talking about there. You also need to have motivation to be creative, or an environment that supports that. And then you also need some sort of more creative thinking skills that help you break away from it. And all those three things together give you the most chance of being creative. But if you're missing some of it, or you're down on one of it in that sort of triangle, then that's the area to work on.
Cool.
I've got. Sorry, yeah. Paul, thanks.
Alex is doing his veto.
No, not at all. No, I just got an interesting question that came up there, and I think hopefully will resonate with people. It's around some of those sort of perhaps tips and techniques. So I find sometimes, I've got a chunk of work that's my BAU and doing some things, and then I might set aside some time to think, okay, what are we going to do next with TechFest? And think I now want to be creative, and how any tips about then changing my mindset and getting me into a position of thinking more creatively when perhaps I've been in a mindset that isn't there. I think that's something that I would put myself fairly low on the creativity, and something perhaps I struggle with. Just letting those, turning into a bit of an idea athlete, I suppose.
Well, that's the thing. That would be my first top tip is how do you feel with that identity on? Put the cloak on. You're an idea athlete, Alec. What does that feel like?
I think it feels like
you
pressure.
You are a creativity Olympian.
I can see a GIF appearing right now.
Yeah, well, it's true. I think you think you have to come up with something really crazy and out there, and I probably am too critical and going, I don't. Okay. Where do I start?
That's the point. That is the point. So the big one for me is all these behaviors and hacks and tips. If you embrace that identity, if you can really start to go, do you know what? It might feel foreign for me, but I am an idea athlete. Yeah. Yeah, if you take that on board, so start behaving like one. Once you start to do that, you start to look at, again, and moving away from the individualization of this thing, you start to say, well, maybe I find someone like Paul Bailey to knock some ideas around with. This is a co-sport. It's not necessarily just me on my own, or where's your coach, where's your mentor, what do you do to get yourself into that state? But you've said the golden word with this one, which is too critical. There are techniques, there are strategies. That's what I do in my creative thinking masterclasses and stuff like that. All that is the fundamental, really, is control your criticism. Just put it away. There's ways of doing that, but just how to do it. Again, however you feel low now, you were a genius at 5. How it's in there. You know how to do it. So creative genius. Yeah, that's the truth. The chances, I think we've got research to back it up. So again, the reason why people have, it's been learned. Sadly, you'll have done stuff and people have gone, that's too wacky, Alec, or what? Something will have happened along the line that's undermined your creative confidence, but you can get it back. And again, once you've got that idea athlete mentality, then it's just a case of then the incremental improvements. But give yourself permission to, for a while, just to let it not be critical about your ideas. If you need to come up with new stuff for Tech Fast, just let it out, let it go. It doesn't have to be for a weekender sitting in a wigwam. It can just be for 5-10 minutes. And just let that, and then start to think, okay, now I'm going to start reviewing these. How could these work?
I think it's a really important point around it's not shouldn't be a solo activity necessarily. Whomever it is, someone great to throw ideas off and challenge and so I think that's really
and those people, and when you start thinking like that, you start thinking, okay, again, this element for me as a system is like, well, who's your mentor? If you're an idea athlete, who's your coach? Because mentorship and coaching is different. Physio, where do you go when you get hurt? How do you get motivated? This analogy for me starts to cascade a whole load of actions and behaviors and values that start to say it isn't magic, as Tim was sort of saying. Actually, you work at it and you get better at it, and it is a you might look like magic to people outside of it. But I've been drawing since I was 3. I've been thinking creatively. I've tried to retain a lot of these things. I've been through design education. I've been taught. So it's not a fluke. It's not, like running fast. It's not a fluke, what I mean?
Definitely. No, that's great. I think that links to one of the questions I've seen, because I think people were asking about recommended reading and resources. So that's probably something that if you can put together a bit of a list for us, Karl, we'll share with the group, the community as well.
And I was going to offer as well, I'm happy to speak to lots of different people. I make time each day. So, if there's folk who want to have a chat, and again, the specific context has a big difference for this. So, drop me a line, we'll sort something out. Again, I think context is really important.
We've got a really good question from Zoe Turner. I don't know if you want to ask Karl your question around support.
It was more of an observation, really, because when you said support, I'm not actively supported by my manager, but he actively allows me to do things that are not necessarily part of my work. So I'm a coder, but I'm getting involved in the ethics committee. And so he kind of like turns a blind eye. And I just wondered if people sort of looked at support in an active way, and maybe it's something that we don't really think of in terms of environment, but it made me think. And so thank you very much for asking that question, that actually that's why my environment is really good. Because I know my manager allows me to do things, but I know others would go, well, that's not part of your work. Why are you doing that? But it does involve my work, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think that's the point, isn't it? Is for us to think about, okay, where am I at? Am I at my peak? How do I maintain it? Or you know, where am I? And what do I need? What do I need? Or what can I give others as well? You know, because that's part of this thing. And it doesn't have to always, active support doesn't have to always, you know, it can be creating a climate. It can create structures, rituals, security, a sense, all these sorts of things that help you develop and when you need to be creative, when you need to. I mean, again, you don't always have to be creative in your work, but when you do, you've got you put the hours in off the track to be good on the track when you need to kind of run that race.
Thanks, Zoe. I think we've got time for one more question, which is from Tom. Let me find Tom. Morning, Tom.
Hiya, hello.
Hi, so you got a question around space.
Yeah, I was fairly late to the meeting, but you may have already answered it. I was just wondering, how do you encourage, so as an organization, generally creativity doesn't really come into your work. How would you kind of encourage that?
This interesting, fascinating question, Tom. Well, are you thinking of it as, how does it not come in? New and useful ideas?
So
is it because it's artistic? Is it because it's seen as something to do with the branding and marketing and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I think my, so I run a small company, so like creativity now is fine. But when I used to work for kind of large organizations, it was seen more as something you did in a workshop, not as kind of part of your daily job.
Yeah.
And it was, so I guess it's just encouraging it throughout your kind of working day.
Yeah. I think some of that comes down to, like, again, the organization and its design-led philosophy or not. And I think there's an element as well of how much it's willing to invest in its people to you know, again, the thing is people love innovation. Yeah, innovation's good. Some invest in design thinking to achieve innovation, but not everyone's kind of been in that place. Okay, how do we support creativity to fuel the design thinking to lead to the innovation? So there's an element of like putting the resources and the time and the support into that, rather than just take, you know. So I think it says a lot about the organizations I work for when they're looking to how do we run various different things, you know, workshops or coaching or such like that, to help our people and build that muscle for when they need to use it, rather than just expect them to develop it themselves and then just expect it to be there when they've not put the effort in to create the environment or create the stuff, you know.
Yeah, so certain places I've worked have had like innovation boards, kind of, I guess, forums where you can post stuff, but I think it's certainly avoiding the kind of negative feedback, you know, where someone squashes your ideas immediately. I think that, that sort of cultural thing is really important.
It is, absolutely. And again, knowing when is the right time to bring in the kind of criticality, and being conscious of that, rather than it being an instinctive kind of, you know, like just jokes and all these sorts of things can be ways that this thing's knocked down, you know, and people and being aware of that for sure. But there's loads of things to do. There's tons of it. If people want to make that development, and again, if you're not getting into this stuff, then what are you doing? You're generally repeating the same thing, and then you just a race to the bottom in terms of price structures. So,
yeah, cool. Thank you.
Thanks,
welcome.
Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
So unfortunately, we're up on time. I've just got one book recommendation from Jenny. Jenny's going to be speaking next month, and she recommends Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. if you want to boost your feeling of being creative. But you mentioned loads of books there, Karl, that I've never heard of. So I'd be really, really keen to get some kind of reading list from you that we could share with everybody.
Yeah, a lot of them are journals and stuff like that, so from my background. But yeah, there's, I mean,
I was very impressed.
The bottom line, you know how to do it already. Yeah.
I was very impressed that you knew how to pronounce Mihaly
Cheek sent me high. Well, again, you know, I got a video. I practiced it. It's one of those rites of passage within creativity research.
Right, so that's brilliant talk. Thank you very much. The only thing that remains for us to do is to announce the winners of the delightful TechFest mugs, our first piece of merch. So Alec, have you got three?
Yes, so
winners?
I do indeed. 2 I've selected at random through the Twitter, which are Stuart and Jenny. It's not, you know, we've not fixed this, but our next speaker has won a mug, so we expect to see it if you can courier it in time, Paul. And then the other one I did not select at random because Yvette, I think it is, shared this picture with us during today's session. She drew us a picture especially, which I thought was so fantastic. We have to recognise it with doing there. The only there's always a critique. You know, I think there's always constructive feedback. I don't know what this green stuff is in a bacon sandwich. That's the only thing I could say. But no, fantastic. Thanks as ever for your contribution of that. That's amazing.
Great. So if you want to get in touch with either myself or Alec via Twitter, then we can make sure that we get you one of these delightful mugs over to you. So next month we've got Jenny talking about all things agile. Big thank you again to Karl. Really enjoyed your talk, and it's always a pleasure catching up and talking about this stuff, because it's an area that I'm really passionate about. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Pleasure, Paul.
So,
pleasure, Alec.
Have a wonderful day, everybody, and we'll see you all